Big time fight coming up this weekend. We have the former UFC bantamweight champion Cody No Love Garbrandt taking on the studiously nicknamed Don't Blink Cachoeira France, representing City Kickboxing. And listen, last weekend we had City Kickboxing in the co-main event, and it was Brad Riddell losing to his former striking coaching foe, I guess you could call him, Rafael Fiziev, in an all-time fight. But I have one bit of advice for Rafael Fiziev. Call out anybody in the entire world. Don't call out Vince Vaughn.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, and only for this. It's a good way to get people to know who you are, because this is why. If he called out Matt Brown, or not Matt Brown, wrong weight class. Let's say he called out, I don't know, Ally Quinta. No, I know he's retired. Just a name. Just hear me out. If he called out X fighter at lightweight, because it doesn't matter and you're really hung up on this, it wouldn't matter and no one would care. When he called out Hespula, it got shared all over the internet and people started talking about him. When he called out Vince Vaughn, it got people talking about it because it got shared all over the internet. That's why it is somewhat of a positive if you're a guy like Fiziev, who doesn't speak English all that well. It's an easy way to get your name into the headlines without just using your fighting.
Call out Tony Ferguson. But when it comes to this fight, we have the flyweight debut for Cody Garbrandt, a guy that's teased the move in the past, but he's had kidney issues, so I don't know what the hell we're going to get this weekend, Matt. Because, listen, I try and take fights at 100%. Cody Garbrandt, 100% at the best he can be at 125 pounds against Cachoeira France at 100% at 125. But you can't always do that. I mean, it's the same thing. Josh Emmett's taking on Dan Ige. Now, Josh Emmett at 100%, we kind of mentioned it in that video, he could probably challenge for a title tomorrow against Alexander Volkanovski and put on a damn good performance. But he tore his ACL, his MCL partially torn. He had patellar tendon issues. He also, fractured his patellar bone and his tibia. Like, he's had so many injuries, orbital injuries, concussion injuries, that I just can't look at him at 100% fighter, or it clouds my judgment a little bit. With Cody Garbrandt, he's had issues in the past. Now, listen, he's had a weird run his last 5 fights because he went balls to the wall against TJ Dillashaw, almost finished him in the first round of their first fight. In the second round, gets finished. He goes balls to the wall in their second fight. He gets finished again. And then he fights Pedro Munhoz, and he gets finished the same way he got finished in Dillashaw 1 and Dillashaw 2. And then he fights Rafael Sansao, who's like my guy Ronnie Yaya, a guy who is still good in his later years, also happens to be from Brazil, but at a certain point, Rafael also hit a wall with age and skill, and Cody goes in there, loves him to death, and hits him with one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen. So Cody's last fight against Rob Font, you would assume that to make up for the reach, he's got to throw power shots and wrestle, and he tried to do that. It just didn't really work out for him. So a tough fight against Rob Font, to then move to 125 to fight Don't Blink, whose fights either seem to end in the first round or go to decision. It's just such a weird bucket of muscles for me.
I think Cody Garbrandt's back is a lot more hurt than people have ever let on. I really do. I don't know if it is as much of his chin or his defensive strike. It just, remember after he lost to TJ the first time, he was going to go to Germany to get like that Regenikine stuff done with his back, and then he came back to North America. Joe Rogan talked to him about different options. Like, there was an injury there, and it was never really explained all that well. The only thing that I do know is that Garbrandt doesn't wrestle nearly as much ever since he has hurt his back, and he doesn't seem to have the same power. Now, that might have nothing to do with his back. It was a conversation that, this guy had a very serious back injury. It's what prevented him from moving down to 125 in the first place. He was supposed to fight Figueiredo at one point. A lot of people forget this. Like, that fight was booked. It was ready. He was going to make the move down, and then he gets hurt. Brandon Moreno, we all know what happens. I think there was a serious injury there. I really do. And whether it is back, whether it's, who knows what it is, I don't think we are seeing the same Cody Garbrandt that we were seeing in the past. And the other athlete I always think about when I think about back injuries, and they're still able to be pretty much the same version of themselves, is Clayton Kershaw. I don't know if there's a lot of baseball fans out there, but he went from being like one of the greatest pitchers ever, hurt his back, and he was still really, really good after he hurt his back, but you could tell that it wasn't 100%. It was like 95% of what we were getting before. It was a really good silhouette, if you will, but it wasn't the exact same thing. And I feel like with Garbrandt, we're seeing a similar fighter to who we used to see, but I feel like at 30 years of age, he's taken so much more damage than your average 30-year-old with only, 16 fights? Like, it is kind of wild. he had such a fast run to the title, and basically like half of his professional career has been spent with like championship quality fighters. So it is wild that he's this young in his MMA career, and he's already accomplished this much.
Cachoeira is 2 years younger and has double the pro fight experience at 125 pounds
wild,
mostly. So it is really crazy. With Cody Garbrandt, he's supposed to take on Davison Figueiredo last year, but unfortunately a torn bicep takes him out of that fight. So we get Garbrandt here against Cachoeira. Again, for Kai, you look at his 5-on-in. I mean, Mark De La Rosa win a couple years ago, lost to Brandon Moreno in a decision. He beats Tyson Nam by decision. He loses to Brandon Royval by submission in a wild fight. That was a fight of the night in 2 rounds. And then he takes on Rogerio Bontorin, where he almost gets finished in that fight, and then he comes back and he knocks him out. So for Bontorin, make the weight, bud. Just show up and make the weight. That's all we need. But for Cachoeira, very well skilled, very, very tricky, because guys can almost never really figure out the speed and the power, and that's what makes him really special.
Yeah, he does have that unique combination of he doesn't need one punch to knock you out, although he can get it done with one shot, but he has really good combinations. I think the big key for this fight is going to be how kick heavy does Cachoeira decide to be, because if he does decide to use his calf kick, use his leg kick and body kick, especially early on in the fight, I think it's going to be a massive advantage for him, because the one knock against Garbrandt and his striking is that he is not a very kick-heavy striker. Now, I remember, again, the in-between between the Dillashaw number 1 and 2 fight was, oh, I trained in Thailand, I've got a new kicking game, and he did demonstrate that a little bit in the second Dillashaw fight, but it was very odd. We heard about the move to Thailand, he did make the move, he threw the kicks, and then it was like, okay, it didn't work in that fight, let's just never talk about them again. He's shown the ability to have really nice kicks in the past, but it's just not something that's in his toolbox. And it does suck to see, because if Garbrandt did have some of those longer range tools to just sort of keep busy and keep active before he can do his big flurries on the inside or before he can land that big counter shot, then his numbers would just look a lot better. Like in a 5-round fight, he would be able to win 1 or 2 more rounds just based off his volume a little bit better. In this fight, I guess I'm gonna ask you 2 questions, and I think that these will be able to answer the fight for us. Do you think Garbrandt can be better at 125 than he was at 135? Or do you think we can only see about the same version that we did see at 135?
All I'll say is this. He's going to have a nice height advantage in this fight, but the reach is actually pretty close, which is weird. Cachoeira, I'm going to bring the graphic up. Yeah, he has quite a bit more in reach, actually. So that's what makes it really weird. I don't see, like... You move down in weight, and when we're in the smaller weight class, you move down in weight, usually give up on speed. Like, if you look, Jose Aldo, Rob Font last weekend. Rob Font was faster.
He was.
And his jab was great, and his combinations were great. Jose Aldo had the power. So, can Garbrandt move down, have a power advantage, and knock out Cachoeira? Maybe.
He's been dropped before, and it'll be really interesting. Brandon Moreno had a lot of success with his boxing on the inside against Cachoeira, and we know how good the stand-up of Cachoeira is, but if you have really fast hands, you can hit him with your combinations and get out of the pocket. Now, Brandon Moreno might have some of the fastest hands, really, in the UFC. I don't know if his boxing is as good as Cody Garbrandt's, just for pure technique-wise. I know a lot of people might give me a hard time for that, but Garbrandt, his boxing truly is, like, elite. It's just... He struggles when he's fighting guys who are bigger than him, who have that reach advantage, and that really was the key with the Rob Font fight. Do I think Garbrandt's that much worse than Rob Font, just when you look at all their skills? No, not at all. It's just Rob Font has some physical attributes that Garbrandt can't match at that weight class. So, I really do want to pick Cody Garbrandt in this fight because of his speed, because of his power. But this is the problem. When somebody moves from middleweight to welterweight, it might be 15 pounds, but that 15 pounds means a lot less for their body overall than 10 pounds does moving down from 135 to 125. I really do think that this cut is a big deal because you're losing almost 10% of your body weight right now. Like, that is a massive deal for someone who already only weighs in at 135. It just... When you think about the percentage of actual their body weight that they're cutting, this is going to be a massive cut for Garbrandt. I know he's not a big 135er, but still, like... A bantamweight moving down to flyweight is never a good sign. The last time we saw a guy do this, he basically didn't eat food for 2 months and just took, like, prescription vitamins, and it was TJ Dillashaw. So, I'm worried about the weight cut, honestly. I'm worried about a lot of the injuries that Garbrandt's had in his career, but when I do think about how his skills set up against Cachoeira, I think he is the faster fighter. I just worry a lot about his durability, especially he had a bit of a fragile chin up at 135. I don't think cutting an extra 10 pounds off your body is going to help with your durability.
I have a really hard time with this one. You look at the odds, Cachoeira open to plus 105, he's plus 124 right now. Garbrandt open to minus 125, he's minus 151 over on best fight odds. If we look at Tapology votes, 817 total votes, 56% Garbrandt, 59% by knockout for the 44% that have Care France, 41% by decision, 50% by knockout.
Do you want me to pick first? Because I'm confident with my pick all of a sudden.
5 years ago, I had Cody Garbrandt.
Thank you. But are you also picking Cachoeira France?
Yeah.
This is my problem with Garbrandt. I'm going to bring this up with Amanda Nunes, and I'm going to pat myself on the back. I hate doing this, but just hear me out. When Nunes fought Chris Cyborg, my whole point was that Cyborg's only fought people who she's way better than for the last, decade. And that means you don't really have to make any improvements because you're always better than the people who you're fighting. With Cody Garbrandt, he has lost in some vicious ways in the past couple of years. Has he really grown and become a better fighter because of those losses? To me, I don't think so. I still think he's the exact same guy he was when he got the belt. Now, that's a really good thing because it did get him to a title shot. But to me, this could sound weird. It felt like Cody Garbrandt was built to beat Dominick Cruz, and that was about it. He was brought up through Team Alpha Male, trained specifically with guys his whole entire life, getting them ready for Dominick Cruz, and that was the whole story. I've trained with 4 people who have all fought Cruz. They're going to help me with this information. That's going to help me get over the hump. It's almost like he got to the top of the mountain. It was like, sweet. I'm here now. There's not another peak to climb. Whereas you see other champions, they become champion, and sometimes they even level up after they get to that point. With Garbrandt, he was making all these improvements. To me, it felt like he almost got the belt a little bit too early, pulled a Teofimo Lopez, and thought, hey, I've got the belt. I don't really need to keep on making those improvements. So I don't think we're going to see a better version of Garbrandt. I worry about his durability, and I worry about it a lot at flyweight.
Now, let's flip the script, because we got to give both guys their due here. For Garbrandt to get the win, again, it's speed, it's power, it's the wrestling. And again, we did see some of that in that Font fight. It just didn't necessarily work. Rob Font is a good wrestler, offensively and defensively. He took down Jose Aldo.
Yeah.
And he took down Jose Aldo. So you love to see it. But for Garbrandt, he's got to implement that complete skill set and not get caught on the feet. And for those reasons, it's just tough for me to see that 100%. The bicep injuries, if there's a back injury.
There has been.
There's so many different things. For those reasons, I have Cachoeira France. But if you have a good reason for either of those fighters, you let us know down below in the comment section. This should be an insane fight. We have this one as possibility of a fight of the night. This and Pedro Munhoz, Dominick Cruz. If you missed that video, go back and check it out. Big time fights at the top of this card. Nunes taking on Pena. You have Oliveira defending against Poirier. You're not going to want to miss it. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.